Hello, hello, my beloved waking gods and goddesses. Maria West here. Welcome to Love, Truth, and Beauty. This is episode 387 and my 15th installment of my video series, Conversations with Women on Love, Truth, and Beauty. And here today, I have a very special guest, Katrina Monahan. Katrina, welcome.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, I'm Katrina Monahan, small town girl living in London, Ontario right now. I've been playing with my shadow. I think I've been playing with it for a few years, but really diving in for the last, I'd say, 6 months, dancing with it, writing about it, writing a
Great.
memoir. Yeah, still learning.
I love that. And I love that we are going to open up a very, very juicy, hot, very controversial topic that a lot of people don't want to touch. And I've touched upon it quite a number of times, a lot of times, much to my dismay, because people get really upset. So I'm just going to let you take the lead because, we started having this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, oh, she's a good one. She's a good one. So let me know.
Sounds good. Sorry, did you ask a question, Maria?
No, we were just
Okay.
glitching a little bit. So yeah, I think you froze, I froze, and there was a time weird thing. So, which always indicates to me that there's some effery going on in the ethers because, the powers that want to be, they've all programmed us to be sex slaves. As far as I'm concerned, the moment we are conceived, and it just goes in all directions from there. So anyways, I would love to hear your insights.
Well, I was surprised when you said that, like, there's some people who don't believe there's a hookup culture. Like, that's news to me because, like, in my dating era, when I was dating, like, that was like what people did, and I got caught up in it. Um, I wouldn't say in high school that I saw it as much. Like, I think it became like in the last 15 years, especially, it just kind of like it's ramped up even more so.
I
And
agree.
I think I read the book Attachment. It's on attachment theory. I don't remember the name off by heart, but they're basically saying, and I was guilty and victim to this, where a lot of like people who have anxious attachments, they're given all these tools on how to relate to people, but it's not really being yourself. You're relating to an image of what somebody else wants. And like an avoidant, let's say.
Yes.
Like there's that dance of anxious and avoidant, and that gets fed.
Yes. And in my experience, that was kind of the dance that I did. Me being the avoidant one and me causing a lot of
Okay.
anxiety with the men and the women that I was with, because, you come forward and then you're like, I can't. But then there is all the sort of bonding that happens when you're sexual way, way, way too early in the game.
Yeah.
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 Tell us
Yeah.
more
I would
about
say
that.
I played both. Oh, I would say I played both roles. I was thinking it's funny because as we talked last time, like there's more stuff that are like I'm reminded of. Um, and I definitely played both roles of avoidant and anxious, where like the next day, it's like there's some people you didn't want to hang out with the next day. Like they brought up that avoidant tendency. And then there's people who like brought up that like anxious tendency in myself. And that for me is the biggest thing with hookup culture. If you don't want to spend time with somebody to even like go to the beach the next day or even hang out the next day, you're using each other as an object.
Yes, I totally agree.
And I think that's the thing with like hookup culture that people are uncomfortable with, because some people don't want a commitment and they still want to have. And I think if you can really have a healthy communication, I think it's rare these time in the times that we're in for people to really have reverence for each other and have like a friendship and like um I don't know, friends with benefits, but I don't know if it works. I don't know. Like I don't think we're there. Like I don't think we're evolved enough.
I agree. And certainly during the time when I was growing up, during the 70s, I was a teenager during the 70s and in my 20s in the 80s. And I think about it and I think about just the uncomfortable way I would feel just even having conversations on, say, like a date and feeling that for me, it was like that there was an instant ick with the person, even though there was a lot of chemistry and a lot of attraction. And the instant ick could at any moment like explode in my face, or I would literally, and I've done this, like ghost the person, walk out the back of, say, a cafe or a restaurant and just leave. So I think about that. Or after the rare taking it a little bit way too far, and especially during, I'd say, a date where there's alcohol involved or there's drugs involved or there is this sort of nervous tension involved, all of that seems to spin everything around. And just based on a lot of the women that I've talked to over the years, over the decades, it seems like, and this is just mostly anecdotal, I have no idea if there are studies to this, but it seems like we women, we want to appear like we're together, we're cool, we don't want to hurt the guy's feelings, all this kind of stuff. So we end up doing a lot of things that we wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of women, I'm just going to go there. I've talked to a lot of my friends, I've done it, where it was just easier to do the proverbial blow job and get the fuck away than it
Yeah.
was to actually confront a man and just say, no, thank you, not feeling it. And
Yeah.
I mean, the shame alone with that is like, whoa, it's
Yeah.
really, really crazy.
It
And
needs to be talked about though. Oh my
yeah,
God. Because now that I'm in a healthy relationship, I'm telling you, like, this idea that we need to do something to appease people, I
yes,
felt that at the beginning. And my partner was like, no, like, that's a story. He's like, I'm not here for that. Like,
yeah,
we're in a
yeah,
committed relationship. That story took a long time to die. And I didn't
okay,
ever act on it with him because I felt safe. And like you're talking about that, like when alcohol's in the mix and like you're in this, you kind of like it creates a haze.
yes, it
And
does.
I drank for like definitely social anxiety and to like put a bomb on my anxiety. And I'm sure that like played into some of the decisions I made, but like I
Mhm.
also kept doing it.
Well,
And
tell us more about that. Tell us more about the haze, and you mentioned the bomb that you put into it. I'm curious what your process was, because I think it's important, and especially having this conversation, because I think we probably have a lot of common golden threads. And, and of course, one of the things that I wanted to bring up too is the whole fear of slut shaming, fear of being called a prude. I mean, these polarities are, and they're very powerful polarities. And even with the men, I think too, that goes on quite a bit. So I'm very curious about your process.
well, I think for me, like the group of friends I was with, the two girlfriends I had, they were pretty innocent that way. Like I think I won't say what their experience is, but they were pretty innocent. And I think because like I wanted love. Like I was seeking for love when I did these things. Like inherently, I think I was seeking for that.
Mhm.
Um Can you repeat your question? Sorry, just so I could be more
Well,
clear.
you were talking about your process of how you were able to, I don't think, apply more consciousness to the choices that you were making, particularly with alcohol. And how does that go? Is it more kind of an awareness with the aftermath and all the sort of, like, I know for me, just I'll think of certain things in my sexual past where I'm just like, oh God, it's just so messed up still that it just gives me this creepy feeling. So what is your process with looking back at your experiences and your choices and maybe your non-choices, and how do you work that out, particularly if there's alcohol
Oh,
involved?
yeah, it's hard to look back on and talk about this. I think what really stopped me from continuing down that path was I finally like became good friends with somebody who was sober, and she like was the first person in my circle who loved me for me. Like there was no encouraging me to drink. I was still a bit of a drunk at the time, but I didn't feel judged. And I didn't also have any examples like that prior. Like most
Okay.
people, it was like, no, just keep drinking. And it like encouraging the culture. So but then like after being friends with this woman, I woke up several times from nights out and like not even remembering if I'd been with somebody. And there was like just this last time where I was like, I'm leaving the country. I'm packing my bags. I'm only going to have the bare minimum of money. I'm going to get sober. This is how I'm going to do it because I'll be too scared to be homeless. So I won't save my money.
Oh,
Like I kind of took
wow.
a pretty drastic route.
Yeah, that's intense. So what you're saying is the lack of awareness about what had happened the night before was a real, okay.
It was a
Yeah,
wake up call because
yeah.
there were a couple situations that could have turned out a lot worse if I didn't have my wits about me of like taking off and like saving myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't keep putting myself in this situation.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I just started to I started to care about myself.
and that is a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Wow, that's an intense story, because when you can't remember and you're not sure, um, I I had a similar experience, and this was a roofie situation. And
Oh
what was
shit.
weird about this was that I knew the people at the party that I'd gone to. These were my friends, and they saw what happened and they let it happen. And and this was really kind of the wake up call for me to, I'm always the designated driver, by the way. So my drinking and drugging were never the issue, but it was me kind of finding myself in situations with so-called friends or so-called neighbors, acquaintances, and shit getting out of control. So what happened with this was
Mm,
apparently I got roofied and found myself in a weird bed next to a weird dude who was passed out. I didn't know where my clothes were. And I found them in the living room, and I found my car. So obviously, somebody drove my car to this place. I had no idea where I was. My car needed gas, right? I end up at the gas station. I was 55 miles away from my house. And that scared the shit out of me because I'm thinking, whoa, like, and it turns out I hadn't had sex with this person. Nothing happened. But just the thought that I had lost consciousness and drove and apparently I drove because I'm a very petite woman and I have to have my car my seat way up to the dashboard to drive. It's a 4-speed. So, it's like I need to be able to reach the clutch and everything else. So that hadn't gotten moved. So, and this was a big dude. And I'm thinking, holy shit, girlfriend, that is not cool. And that was a scary,
Yeah.
scary moment. And so
Yeah.
I
'Cause
don't
you could have
drink.
killed yourself. You could have killed somebody else.
Yes, yes. And I could have been, I mean, the guy was bigger than me. He could have killed me. He could have killed me. He could have hurt me, you know? And I confronted my friends and they gaslighted me, which is really super, super weird. That, oh, you guys were like really friendly and knew each other. I have no memory of who this person is. I still don't to this day. So, these are some of the dangerous situations when sex and drugs and alcohol get involved, or the ill
Yeah.
intent of another person to try to take advantage of you, but they're so fucked up they don't even make good on their intent, and I'm assuming that he had ill intent. I don't know.
Sure. Well, and I think friends don't always want to see it, because I've been in situations like that where it's like, questioning the next day, like, where was my friend in this? Like, why weren't they, they were this designated driver. They knew I didn't want to leave
Mhm.
with this person. They basically pushed me into a cab, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I went into therapy about that because it was so disturbing to me. And I'm a bit, because I'm avoidant, and because of my trauma, I'm very like hyper vigilant of things. Like if I'm driving, I don't drink.
Yeah.
So I do have that rule. So that incident was just like so perplexing. I hadn't realized I'd gotten roofied. Um, and then there are consequences about that. Um,
Right.
so tell us a little bit about like what goes through your mind when you're working this out. I mean, this is a lot of the sexual shadow work that I feel like we all need to be doing in order to dissolve the shame, deactivate the trauma, deactivate the shame. Because, when we get those triggers and we get those messages, oh, you're really, really bad, you slut, blah, 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 blah. All of those negative, derogatory, things that happen. Um, what's your process in that?
I'm really compassionate with myself, super compassionate with myself, because the truth is it stems from neglect. Um, and when I talk about my family, I love them. I like wish them, all the best. And there was neglect. Um, I was raised by an alcoholic. Mother was very like, I didn't really know who to turn to, so I turned towards the culture. Because I remember one of my boyfriends at the time, he had one of those like racy girls and a supermodel poster in his room. And I remember telling him that that wasn't right, that that was like wrong. And it's, obviously used to just like see her as an object. And I look back and I forgot about that, obviously, because I moved on to become pretty promiscuous. But it, I have a lot of compassion for myself. And after taking Caroline Riley's shadow workshop course,
Yay,
I don't know
Caroline.
if it's in her, it's amazing. I couldn't recommend it enough for anybody. But yeah, like I heard this quote and it resonated so much with me. The woman or the daughter will often who's ready to feel the stuff for the family, which is me, I think. There's she'll take on the shadow of the father that's not acted out. And so, you're given this idea that from a young age that you're going to be expected to be raped by men almost like it was a way of protecting me, but like that statement obviously did not protect me and empower me. It made me feel like I was going to walk around in that state where I'm going to be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly how that planned out with me deciding to walk that path, but looking back, I can see how the story weaved its way into my psyche, into my behaviors and wanting love. And I didn't know how else to find it. You know, you're given all these Cosmo books about basically appeasing to the man, and like, God forbid you tell somebody you want a serious relationship and get to know you. And because like I did see my friends do that kind of thing, but for some reason for me it felt like out of like it wasn't possible for me.
Mm.
Like it didn't feel like it was something I would ever be able to possibly have for a story.
Interesting. So, yeah, okay, tell us more about that. Tell us more about that way of seeing yourself. Where do you think that, like, what's the core wounding around that story? Because it's a familiar story.
Yeah. Oh, I'd say it's not being seen. So it's like, well, if you're
Uh-oh, we lost her. We're gonna keep going here, and hopefully she'll come back. This is an important topic, kids. Very, very, very important. Let's see if we can get her back. Got her
yeah,
back.
so I would say the story's rooted in not being seen. So if it's like I'm not going to be seen by my family, I don't feel seen by my culture, by like, you know, I was severely bullied. And it's funny because as I'm explaining this, there's like this voice that's saying, "Oh, you're making excuses." But no, this is the story. And it's like, okay, well, I have to be seen. Like I want to be seen. I want love. So like the way to find love is through sex, which yeah, it's rooted in not being seen. And like as a teenager, if you're not seen in your family, you're going to be seen in your culture. Like you're going to find a way to be seen, right?
Very true.
And like it felt like better to be seen than to be rejected for who I really was, which was
Yes.
like this gentle, I shined too brightly as a kid. It felt like.
Aw, yeah. You mentioned bullied. Why were you being bullied? What was just because the kids could bully you?
I think it's very sensitive. Yeah, I wouldn't stand up for myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
I liked people. I liked all people. I was very sensitive. I liked helping the younger kids. And I think I was pretty dorky, and I kind of said things that like didn't really make sense, maybe like just silly little jokes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So that gets laid on top of it all too. And it just sort of chips away at
Oh,
our esteem, chips away at our ability to actually, the polarized way of being, to be seen and to not be seen, to disappear, you know, those
yeah.
polarities. And it's like the polarity of opposites, and you desperately want it, and it's too risky, you know it's way, way
Yeah.
too risky. Let's talk about the term promiscuity and what that entails, because I know the definition is different for a lot of people. I led a group of men once upon a time. I actually took it over when I was doing my free service hours to complete a course of training. And these men that I uh, I led basically had an addiction to pornography. And so
Mhm.
it was a very interesting kind of group of men because there were quite a different array. There were some very, very attractive men, and then there were men who were, okay looking, but were either overweight or had some real issues in terms of communication, didn't feel good about themselves, on and on. But the commonality is the availability of porn, whether it's online, whether it's movies, whether it's sex shops, the whole nine yards. So the whole thing about promiscuity came up in terms of how they defined women. And I found it absolutely surprising because they, their whole notion of promiscuity, and this was across the board, didn't matter, it was the attractive guys or the guys that weren't that attractive. Their conclusions were that any woman that would let you have sex with them on the first date was across the board promiscuous, and you would never, ever, ever let them meet your family, let them meet your friends. You would hook up with them again and again and again, but they would never move beyond the social confines of this hookup. I was stunned. I was actually very,
That's so
very upset.
telling.
What was that?
Yeah, that's telling because it's like, okay, so you'll use her.
Yes. Yeah. And
You're
they
you're
felt they
basically
were being
saying you're
used.
saying yeah,
They
you're
felt they
saying
were
it's
being used.
wrong.
Yeah. So there was a clear
Like
double
there's
standard.
yeah, because there's shame in their answer to begin with. They know what they're doing is wrong. They don't want their
Yes.
family to see it. They don't want wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they all came from, some came from religious backgrounds, some not religious. But what I found was the attractive men were particularly malignant in their attitude because, because they were so attractive, and because of the just the onset, the clear onset of raising the stakes of hypergamy, where a woman is going to marry up from her own status. Okay, all of this just gave these guys so much power over women, and they would just, I mean, they were very, very clear. If I don't have porn, I can fuck my brains out with 2 or 3 different women every single night if I wanted to. And I'm sure that was the
Oh
case.
man.
So, anyways, imagine me as a facilitator, and I just really had to like step on my rage a lot of times because I wanted to go off.
Take a deep breath.
Yes, take a deep breath. So, regulating my nervous system so I didn't come off as some, like reactionary. But I was squirming in my seat because I had dated some of these men. In fact, I married one. I married a couple of them, actually. So, I mean, let's just be real and frank here. So, getting back to your process, did you encounter men like this who blatantly were like entitled?
Oh yeah. There's one specific guy who stands out, this Italian guy. Oh man. Um he didn't say those things to me, but you felt it.
Mm-hmm.
Like staring at his phone on a date when I'd go to the bathroom, couldn't like take a break from like, work or whatever. And just this like energy, you just feel it. Sometimes they don't have to necessarily say it. You feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you're just viewed as lesser than just because, whatever reason for them. Um, yeah, one of the last guys I saw for like a little bit before my partner. It was pretty quickly that I realized I'm like, this guy, like, this is the last guy I'll ever like let treat me this way, because he was just very entitled, very not respectful, no sacredness. I couldn't go to the bathroom at his house, and that's when I was like,
What?
whoa.
Wait, what?
Like I just like I couldn't go to the bathroom. I didn't feel like, you know, when you travel, I don't know if this happens to you, but you can't go to number two quite as easily.
Yeah, because everything is
So
just
that
kind
kind
of
that
off. Yeah.
like ungrounding, yes. And I was just like, yikes. Like I was like, I could do better than this. I was like, I deserve better than this. I'm, you know, clearly he had mommy issues, and it was definitely a little trauma bond of a situation. And just the way he
Mhm.
would describe his family, like I was like, okay, I have issues and I struggle with my parents, but I'm like, I don't talk about them the way that, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. So in hindsight, with this guy, like, what was in it for you? Well, like, what do you think drew you? Now, you mentioned trauma bonding, and we need to talk about that because I think that is like it is such a magnetizing, incredible force for bad
Hmm.
decisions, really
Oh,
shit
yes.
decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. So what drew me to him was, so this was during the pandemic, the craziness of like, you know, he made
Hmm.
this presentation to like explain to restaurant owners, to explain to people the logic behind the PCR test and how it was flawed. He was like, so to me, I was like, oh, he's trying to protect the children. He's trying to protect people. I was very attractive to that. And to the fact that he put this together, he cared about people. There was like care involved, because he gave this presentation to several different people, and like I do think he cared about that. Like I won't take that away
Hmm.
from him. I
Hmm.
think there was deep care for that. Um, you know, we liked hiking together. Like he encouraged me to walk barefoot again, which I hadn't done in a while. Like there was good times. There was
Hmm.
positive,
Hmm.
like, you know, yeah, I'd say he just reminded me to like let loose and to be oh my God, to have spontaneity, Jesus
Hmm.
Christ, spontaneity.
Yeah, yeah. But what was the, by the way, one of my triggers is children. So if a man shows me even a periphery interest in um, the safety of children, taking up the
Yes.
cause, or claims to be a family man and his kids are important, on. I will fucking believe anything. So I have learned to like, you know, yeah, take heed and trust, but
You have to
verify.
laugh at it.
Huh?
Yeah.
What was
You
that?
have to laugh at I have to laugh at it, because like looking back, it is very funny in ways. Like now that I know better and I'm not in that situation, I can laugh at it. But like
Yeah.
definitely like he had that like Papa Bear energy of like, I'm gonna come protect you in the ways that you weren't protected, and
Yeah.
you know, cared about other kids. And it was like the lockdowns were happening, like you kind of like had your opinion on COVID, and like you knew who your people were, like that
Mm-hmm.
energy of just like being certain of who you wanted to be around.
Mm-hmm.
It felt
Mm-hmm.
very much like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And what was the clincher for you where you realized, not so much you? Because I know
As
for
soon as I
me,
realized,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, so we had spent a couple days together. Um, And I was like, "I can't go to the bathroom, like, I feel tense and
Okay.
anxious." And I couldn't put reason to it because he hadn't shown me a reason at this point. But looking back, I'm like, "We spent a lot of time together really quickly." Like,
Okay.
that's a sign. That's always a sign.
Yes.
Always
Yeah.
a sign.
Yeah.
Because they basically give you this feeling that, like, you're going back into the womb, and then they sweep it right from out right under you, like, this, like, unconditional, idealized, like, "You're amazing, you're the best," like, this, like, over, like, the top like, care for you, but it's really creepy looking back.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing with, I think, the issue of whether you want to call it promiscuity or becoming sexual way too fast, way too soon, is that once that happens, there's a bonding that takes place where there's that hormonal cocktail blast of nesting, nesting hormones, oxytocin, feeling good, all that, you know, and we
I'm
mistake that.
home.
Yeah, we mistake that for love. We mistake that for true love. We mistake that for this guy is a good guy, and that we're like bonded. And even when you realize the guy's a dick, or you realize you're the dick, it's hard to separate yourself
Yeah.
because it's just all commingling, and it's messed up. So I think that's part of the trauma bond, going back to that, is we have this situation where biology and the hormones, sex hormones come in, and all the nurturing hormones come in, and it's a big effing mess. And it's like and it's very, very addictive, and you go through withdrawals. I'm actually working with a man right now who is doing that, extricating himself from a really, really addictive situation. And this woman, we call her the femme fatale. It's like, and I had inadvertently met her, and I just remember her like, like I was like, holy moly, that is just like, I couldn't stop staring at her, to be perfectly honest, and it was weird. It was totally weird. But this one is like, you talk about the femme fatale, the vixen, the sort of sex pot. I mean, she just was like oozing this thing, and I didn't know it was her until he told me. I don't know. It was like a couple weeks later. I'm just like, holy shit. I can't even imagine a man and trying to resist that.
Right.
It's like, I'm thinking, I'd let her hurt
It's
me, I
very
think. I mean, I'm being facetious and funny, but it's like, that's kind of how it is. When you get caught up in that cycle, it's addictive. You can't get
you
enough.
make excuses.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
you
you
do.
make excuses, and if you can't see it until you're out of it. A lot of
Hmm.
times, like, somebody can tell you your relationship is messed up. You will not see it
Yeah. No, you
till you're
won't.
ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I worked at a women's shelter, and, like, I didn't understand how they kept going back until, like, I started to see that within myself. I was like, "It's really addictive."
Yeah.
'Cause it's comfortable. When you grow up like that, it's comfortable, and then when you get into a healthy relationship, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
No, it really is, because there is no actual drama to how like I know this one. I'm in a very, very quote unquote healthy relationship. There is no trauma bonding. But what's interesting about us is that we have we are two of the same people where we are avoidant. So you got two avoidant people endeavoring
Mm,
to be intimate, and it's very, very, very interesting. And we are avoidant for different reasons. So we don't get to trauma bond on the
right.
same reasoning why we're avoidant. And it's amazing how there's a mechanism, like I can only speak for myself, where there's a part of me where I'm like, I want to start shit. And I have to stop. I've got to stop because I'm not like that generally. I don't start shit, but it's like, what is that? Who's talking to me? And I realize that there's a consensus reality of these very, very intense templates for how we as humans do relationships. And so it's a very, very interesting journey that I watch and I observe. And I'm like going, where did that thought come from? I don't even think that way. Have you ever caught yourself like that where you're like, whoa, where did that thought come from? Where did that impulse come from?
Something silly that's not, yeah, it's because we're bored. Well, it feels boring.
Yeah.
Take me on a grand adventure. Let's go on to, like, I don't know, this promise that one of the other guys would have given to us, even though it never would have happened, but the idea is
Yeah.
enticing.
That is really a good point. That's a good point. And that, all the promises of, say, the sort of love bombing a narcissist, sociopath, psychopath would do. My guy's not a love bomber. It's not going to
And
happen.
healthy people,
What was that?
no,
You cut out.
no. Healthy people don't love bomb. They don't like put on these grand, you know, and I had to unlearn that like relationships they're not super wooey, they're not super wow. They're actually it's like having a best friend that you live with for the rest of your life.
Yes. It's very mundane. I guess that is the term. And that
Life
is,
is mundane. And
yes, it
yeah,
really, really is. In fact, in my studies of Tantra, going to India and just being part of the true tantric culture. And it was surprising to me because my initial sort of touchstones with Tantra was always sort of, I don't want to say it was supercharged with all this new age bullshit of love and light, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and everybody's having orgasms that last for days, and just on and on and on and on. So when I actually got to India and realized, Tantra actually really has very little to do with sex. It has everything to do with the moment to moment to moment mundane reality of time passing by and you being absolutely fucking conscious of what you're up to and what you're not up to. I was stunned. I was absolutely freaking stunned because I think because and especially you and I coming from a lot of trauma in our childhood, we have this kind of, it's up and it's down and it's intense and then it's like weird and we kind of, I think, expect that. We expect relationships to be like that. We expect to be sweat.
yeah,
We expect it to be, explosive and passionate and all that kind of stuff. And then when it's not, we think there's something wrong. And, I always tell folks, I tell my clients
yeah,
and my students, it's like, if you think you're bored and you think you need to start shit, you need to look at your boredom and really check out what's underneath that, what's behind all that boredom where you want to start shit and shake it up. Because that is, I think, the resistance to the sensation of like really kind of arriving in a healthy place. And
yeah.
we always want
Well, and
to
it's
like
like,
fill it.
yeah, and there's this like new, now that I've done this all this shadow work, I feel like last time we talked, I felt like I was in like no man's land, but I'm like, oh, right, I have all this time and energy now to not be pissing about or being like annoyed. So I'm like, what do I do with it? Which is exciting, but it's when you don't have that groundwork and you've
Mhm.
never really been told how to like set goals, it's kind of a bit of a mind fuck. And it takes
Wow.
time. It takes
Mhm.
like
So do you feel like you're in the middle of that?
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm curious, I'm looking at our time. Holy moly, that's flown. It's like already we're like pushing it. Um, I wanted to ask you because I know there are a lot of men and women in our circles that are really, really struggling with conscious sexuality, with the guilt and shame of promiscuity, or its opposite, the whole, the whole prude. I know a lot of men who just stopped having sex. I know a lot of women who did that. I stopped having sex for almost 10 years because I'd had enough. It's like, holy shit, nobody needs this crap. And I needed to get clean, to really purge out, because I think, especially for women, unconscious promiscuous sex is very dangerous for women, um, particularly energetically. I mean, the pregnancy, the STDs, just the physical damage that can happen from a lot of like really unsafe sexual
Mhm.
practices, some of which I've participated in when I'm like, God, ah. I mean, that takes time to like really get honest and excavate and get to the point where you feel like you are back in alignment with your pristine priestess. And that was a long haul for me, you know. So what do you suggest to folks, to men and women, as far as first steps to start unpacking the whole, the whole process of promiscuity, being perhaps a perpetrator, a predator, or a victim? There's always the polarity of opposites here. What do you suggest are first steps?
Yeah. I think being honest with yourself, writing it all down. I journal a ton on it, writing down like in what ways am I a predator and ways can I be a victim? What ways have I maybe unintentionally harmed somebody or pushed too far? And like being honest with the person if you're about to date somebody or commit into a long-term relationship and be like, listen, this is on my plate. This is some stuff I'm dealing with and healing with. We can heal this together because I think we can. And I think taking things really slow, like if I were to ever have to be single again, I would not be if I had to, but like if I was, I would take a long ass time getting to know somebody, asking somebody if they know like what their triggers are, what's their stories,
Mm.
what kind of things do they tell themselves about men and women? What kind of thing, like how do they view themselves according to men and women? Um, like where do they feel it in their body? Where do you feel like you're not respected by the opposite sex or the same sex? And what does that mean about you? Or what did you make that mean about you? Where did you learn that?
Mhm.
I would say even like conscious lovemaking. Like I heard this, I remember I used to listen to somebody, I forget her name, but she like there's like junk food sex, which is
Mhm.
like, let's just have fast, um, better to have sex than no sex, like this, like basically the hookup culture, but in a relationship where it's not really intentional. There's no eye gazing.
Mhm.
It's, you know, it doesn't matter how long it doesn't matter that you don't have foreplay. Like there's no, it's not slow and intentional. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
important. Like you really, It's not prudy to slow down.
No, it is
It's
not.
not prudy to slow down, and I think I had to cement that in my head at the beginning too, and my partner was amazing. It has been amazing throughout all this. He's never the one to feel, I mean, we have our moments, we have this conditioning to unlearn, but it's breathing together and like poking each other's belly button, being like, "Are you breathing?" You know?
Aw,
This feels real. It's I
how
can't believe this is
awesome.
going live. But like it really is that. And like that's why I really wanted to have this conversation because
Hmm.
once upon a time, I didn't think I'd have this kind of relationship. I just didn't know it was available really.
Yeah, yeah,
And like growing up, some of the friends that I used to be friends with, and I think of some of the relationships they're in, and I'm like, I hope you guys find slowness. I hope you find stillness. I hope you take your time. You know, two
yeah.
hours is not prudy,
That's so beautiful. Good for you. Good for you.
but it's not easy. It's not easy.
No.
Like it feels like therapy.
Well, and I think in many ways, the level of consciousness that we put into whatever it is that we're doing in the moment is it can be seen as therapy, but I think that is part of the shadow stuff being uncovered and bringing all that to light, rather than
Yeah.
that intensity of, well, let's just get it over with. And a lot of that is conditioning. I think back to the teenage years, it's like, hurry up, they're coming home, that kind of shit. And we have to unlearn all that kind of stuff. We have to unlearn the
Yeah.
sort of, time issue of our preconceived notions of sexuality. And I
Yeah.
know that there's a mini series or something. I haven't seen it. It's called Outlander, and my partner was talking about it, and he goes, "Well, you could tell that a woman wrote it," and I realized, oh. I read the first book, and it's the writer Diana Gabaldon, who is a wonderful writer, and I took a workshop from her, and she has this talent of just drawing out all these details. And I do remember reading some of her stuff, but my partner was like going, yeah, and you'd have these endless love scenes. And I'm like going, "Ah," you know, just to just to immerse myself in, because I think it's an art. I think it's an art to write it
Yeah.
out, let alone act it out, and let alone live that out, if that makes sense. And it
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
like you're doing it. And you were ready.
Yeah.
You
Well,
were
and I would
ready to
people,
receive that relationship.
yeah. Yeah, which is kind of miraculous because I see like the time before him and like the hookup culture was not that far away from me prior
Hmm.
to meeting him. But
Hmm.
like my soul was ready for it. I was starting to do the work and like, but yeah, I would just tell people hug your partner for 30 seconds every single day, couple times a day, you know, like we could all die, like any of us could die tomorrow.
Yeah.
Work can wait.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I can go on a tangent here, but I think there's so much anger in the world right now, and we really need to grieve with each other. We need to cry. We need to let go of the armor.
I
And
agree.
this is a big part of it. Not easy. When I say this, it is not easy.
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah.
the last person to say it's easy. I've had my defensive moments. With my partner, and it takes practice and it takes being willing to look at the parts that you've really shamed and tucked away.
Hmm. Hmm. And it sounds like you and your partner actually have regular, honest, heart-to-heart conversations about, you know, like your stories, what it is that triggers you, all that. And I think that's super important to put that in your sort of relationship template as a quality that you would love to materialize and manifest in a relationship. I think that's super important because there's so many people where, you know, it's just avoid that. We're just gonna sweep it under the
Yeah.
carpet, or we're gonna like, you know, blow it up, fuck it off, and
Yeah.
default to something less than because it's too scary to face those shadows and to
Agree.
dance with your shadow and
Yeah.
dance with your partner's shadow. It's huge. It's huge. So we're at that
Well, and
time.
sometimes it takes one partner.
Yes. Yes, it does. We're going to have you back on again to continue this conversation. Where can people find you? Where can people find you? Reach out to you?
Right now, sure. Right now, I have Facebook, just Katrina Monahan, or Instagram. The username is traversing worlds _.
Okay.
I'm gonna have a website in the next month with some of my shadow work offerings.
Yay. Good. And we'll have
Yay.
all your information in the show notes below. Katrina, this went by way too fast. I'm just kind of like shocked, but I feel like we're just kind of scratching the surface of it. I think next time, I'd like us to focus in on the specific shadow work stuff that is particularly potent in unpacking and unraveling, and perhaps maybe sharing some of your communication processes that you have with your partner, because I think that's where a lot of us get sort of you know, we hit a hard wall when we're endeavoring to communicate with our partners, especially with a lot of these tender topics. And so I think that would be helpful. So I'd love to have you on
Okay.
again
Would be
soon.
great.
Yeah.
Well, I
So,
really enjoyed this. I talk again soon.
all right,
And I'll
sweetheart.
I'll have exercises ready.
Yeah, that would be great. So thank you so much, Katrina. All right, my
Thanks,
loves. That is it for today. So until we meet again, here is to your love, truth, and beauty. Mwah. Bye for now, sweethearts.